several other meanings in English and originally meant circle. Compare, for example, the compass that we use to draw circles. The word compass also appears a number of times in the King James Version of the Bible, and nobody levels attacks against it there. Usually it's a verb, but sometimes a noun. We should also note that the fact that the Lord had to prepare the device for Lehi implies that it was an instrument not known in his day. So we don't have to worry about whether it was a magnetic compass or not, on the grounds that such an instrument didn't exist at that time. The Lord surely knew the principles on which the magnetic compass works, and could provide one for Lehi. But it's unlikely that this is what the Book of Mormon intended. I think they used the word compass because it was a round ball. And compass means round. The mention of windows that could be dashed in pieces in Ether chapter 2, verse 23 is said to be anachronistic, since glass windows were not invented until the Middle Ages. Actually, the earliest attestations of glass are from the 8th century BC, but the term window originally referred to an opening through which the wind could enter. It is found 42 times in the King James Bible, where, of course, it does not refer to glass windows that we know of. In one passage, 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 17, we read that a window in the palace was opened. So windows sometimes have doors or shutters. The same is true of the window that Noah built into the ark. It could be opened and closed. It seems likely that Ether 2:23 means not that the windows of the Jaredite barges would break, but that the barges themselves would break if they had windows built into them. This, the Lord explains in the next verse, is because they would go through extremely turbulent conditions at sea, sometimes being buried beneath the waves. Windows would mean additional cuts through the wood, which, even if shuttered, would weaken the wooden structure, making it more fragile and thus liable to be, quote, dashed in pieces, unquote. If we read only the sentence containing the word windows and read it out of context, then the antecedent of they would be indeed windows. But it is probable that the antecedent is vessels, the last word of the preceding sentence. Another criticism is that the Book of Mormon speaks of candles, which did not exist in ancient America. The term candle is frequently used in the King James Bible, where the original refers to oil lamps. Candles were not used in the Holy Land in Bible times. Instead, they used oil lamps, which were less known in 17th century England. The Book of Mormon, which Joseph Smith translated into English, was evidently deliberately made to sound like the King James Bible's language, which people of his day associated with scriptures. Consequently, he also used the term candle. One of the most common criticisms against the Book of Mormon is that it says there were horses in America during both Jaredite and Nephite times. But scholars are agreed that horses were not introduced to the Americas until after the arrival of the Spaniards. However, the paucity of skeletal remains cannot be taken as evidence that there were no horses. Though the Huns, as Bill Hamlin has pointed out, were renowned horsemen of the Middle Ages, no single horse bone has been found in the territory they controlled. Though the Bible mentions lions in the Holy Land, and despite the fact that archaeologists had been working there since 1864, it was not until 1983, more than a century after excavations began, that the remains of 2 lions were found in Israel, at the same site, by the way, with no others being discovered since. Another factor that must be considered is that the animal bones found by archaeologists are almost always of animals consumed by the ancient inhabitants of the site. Since the horse, and the lion for that matter, was considered unclean under the law of Moses, one should not expect to find it at a site occupied by the Nephites. When an animal that is not eaten dies in a human habitation, the people remove it from town so its bones would not be found in sites that are of interest to archaeologists. Archaeologists don't go out and just dig up dirt. They only excavate sites where humans live. Let's summarize here. My purpose in this paper has been to demonstrate that the Bible, which most of our critics accept as inerrant scripture, has the same kinds of perceived problems as those the critics find in the Book of Mormon. A few of these problems have already been solved for the Bible with the passage of time. Fairness and logic dictate that we give the Book of Mormon the same benefit of the doubt as the Bible. Any questions? I think we have just a couple minutes here. I think what I really want to do is encourage people to use the Bible more when we discuss issues relating to Latter-day Saints. I was fortunate to have a copy of the Bible when I was 8. My mother bought me one. I was born into a Catholic family, by the way. And that was the first book I ever read cover to cover, except for Dick and Jane Go to the Park and Play with Spot. And my Catholic grandfather is the one who gave me my first copy of the Book of Mormon when I was studying with the state missionaries. Prior to that time, I had attended Bible classes with the Assemblies of God. Catholic attending Assemblies of God and becoming a Mormon may sound like that was the direction I took. But it got me heavily into the Bible, and until about 20 years ago, almost all of my research was centered around the Bible. The Book of Mormon has been a relatively recent thing in my life. But I do think the Bible is one of our best sources for information to refute the critics on issues related to our church and its scriptures.
Just make sure they state their name.